The next project we're going to make in class is the machinist hammer. We are first going to start on the lathe with the aluminum round stock for the handle. This is 3/4 inch diameter aluminum. We're going to start with a piece 9.5 inches long. So we're going to take a tape measure and we'll mark our 9.5. And we're going to cut this to length on the horizontal bandsaw. Now this is a rough length. We're going to get it as close as we possibly can to 9.5. Okay, so we'll open up our pipe. We will let our saw, the head of our saw fall down. We'll tighten up our vise. And we are now ready to cut. So we will turn the machine on. We're going to set our feed rate control to the 1 o'clock position. And we'll let the saw do the work. Okay? I'm not going to hold on to the work. I'm going to let the work fall off the saw once the material cuts the leg. We're also not going to push on the head of the saw. We're going to let the weight of the saw cut itself. Okay, there we go. Power off. And we'll also unplug the saw. That way the cord's not hanging across the room here. With our material cut to length, we want to take now and center drill the ends. So we basically want to take a drill bit and drill perfectly center in the end of our material. And that'll make a little bit more sense in just a second while we do that. So the first thing we're going to do is put our material inside of our chuck. So when we go to drill material, we want our material inside of the 3-jaw chuck, and we want that material to stick out roughly 1 inch. So I'm going to grab my chuck key. Okay, and we're going to take our chuck, we're going to spin it so that the hole for the chuck key is straight up and down. We're going to hold our work in the center, and we are going to tighten it up. Now we want our work, like I said, we want it to stick out roughly 1 inch. So we'll take a tape measure, we'll check this, and we have our material sticking out 1 inch. Now when I tighten up the chuck key, I'm going to take both hands, put them on top of the chuck key, 2 fingers to push, 2 fingers to pull, and we want to tighten up our work. Okay, once we have our work tight, always keep your tools up in the designated area. If you see there's a device up top here, that holds all our tooling. Keep your stuff up there, and that way it's organized. So you'll see me reaching over to the right of the screen several times grabbing different tools. That's where everything's sitting at, so that's why you'll see me grabbing up over there. Okay, so our material is sticking out of the chuck 1 inch. The next thing we want to do is prepare to drill this. So we want to take and put this thing in the tailstock of our lathe. This is called a drill chuck. Okay, notice we have a different style drill bit in here that's called a center drill. And we want to get this thing to set inside of the tailstock. So the first thing I want to do is back up the hand wheel on the tailstock. That's this thing. And we want to get rid of this thing. That's called a live center. So we're going to back up this hand wheel. It's going to spit that out. Okay, now we can place this up here, get that out of the way, and we're going to place our drill chuck into the tailstock. Now, we're going to roll the wheel out. This thing here is called the tailstock ram, R-A-M. The flat blade of the drill chuck needs to set inside here and lock in place so this doesn't turn when we go to drill. So we're going to place this in, and on the tailstock ram there's a ruler. We want that thing to stay at least 1/2 inch. If it's less than 1/2 inch, the drill chuck is not going to stay inside of there. So we'll go to roughly 1/2 inch. We're going to take our drill chuck, we're going to push in and turn, and that is going to lock into place. Okay, now we're just about ready to drill. The next thing we want to do, we're going to back up our cross slide or our cross feed. Get this out of the way a little bit. We're going to bring our tailstock over to the left, and we're going to get that close to the work. We don't want it touching, but we want it close. So we'll go, roughly 1/4 inch away or so. I'm then going to take my tailstock lock. I'm going to give this a little bit of a push, just a light push. We don't have to crank on it. Don't push down with all your weight, just a little push, and that pressure will hold that in place. Okay? At this point, we are just about ready to drill. One more thing we want to pay attention to is where our carriage is and where our tool post is. We don't want anything interfering with the chuck. We wouldn't want our tool holder, our tool bit, or anything to hit that chuck. So please make sure the carriage is over to the right and out of the way, and we have good clearance here. Okay. The next thing we'll do is grab our hand wheel on the outside of the lathe. We're going to give this a spin. I call it a free spin. Okay, we'll give it a free spin. As I say, it doesn't cost anything because we wouldn't want something to hit. If something was to hit or crash here, it's going to cost money to fix. So with our free spin good to go, we're now ready to drill. We're going to turn the power on. We're going to grab our on-off switch. We're going to flip this to the right. Now it is a two-position switch. First position, it clicks on. Second position, it turns on. Okay, notice my chuck is not spinning. I'm going to grab the clutch handle down below, which you can't see. It's the orange handle. We're going to lift up, and now my chuck is spinning. Now I'm going to take the hand wheel from the tailstock. I'm going to turn this in, and we're going to drill roughly 1/4 of an inch into the drill bit. Okay, we're going to back that out. We're going to return our tailstock ram to the 1/2 inch mark. Push our clutch down, shut the machine off. Next, we're going to flip our work over, and we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So take our chuck key, we'll place that inside the chuck. We also need to slide our tailstock down and out of the way so that we have room to maneuver our project. So we'll loosen this up, rotate our work, and we'll put that in the chuck so that 1 inch of material is sticking out. Tighten our chuck key, slide our tailstock back down. We're going to lock this into position. Make sure your ram is at the 1/2 inch mark. Make sure our lathe chuck is tight. Okay, tighten our tailstock lock. And once again, we'll give it a free spin, power on, clutch up, and we will drill. Okay, we completed our hole. We'll return our tailstock ram back to 1/2 inch, clutch down, power off. Okay, we'll slide the tailstock out of the way. And at this point, we're done with the drill chuck. We can actually remove this, and we're going to put our live center back in. So what we want to do here, we'll back up this hand wheel, okay, until it pops out. We'll place this back up where it belongs. And we're now going to put our live center in. Why do they call this a live center? Well, first off, let's talk about the tool for a quick second. This is a live center. So this part is tapered, and this is to fit in the tailstock. This part here spins, and there's a set of ball bearings packed in here. What this is going to do is support the work on both sides. So I lock this into my tailstock ram. I just push it in, make sure our ram is at 1/2 inch. The next thing we're going to do is remove our work, and we need to place it in there so we can prepare for the first cut. So the first cut that we make is going to be for the grip of the hammer. We're going to take and lay a mark out on this. We're going to measure 5 inches from one end over, and then we're going to make another 2-inch mark, and I'll explain why in just a second. So I'm just going to use a tape measure because it's handy. Okay, we're going to make a mark at 5. And then we're going to make a mark at 7. Okay, mark at 5, mark at 7. We're going to put our material in the vise so that 7 inches of material is sticking out. Okay, so we'll place that in next, and we'll put our material in. So we have 5 inches of material sticking out, and we have a 2-inch gap from where the face of the chuck is, that's right here, to where we're going to start working at with our tool bit. We don't want this to be too close. If there's not enough space in between the tool rest and the chuck, or the compound rest and the chuck, this will crash and it'll smash into itself, and it really messes things up. It'll break apart in the lathe. So we always want to maintain a 2-inch gap right here. I'm going to ask you that several times, and you're going to go through it several times. So it's, it needs to be noted. It's a very important part. So our material is in the chuck. We're going to bring our tailstock. We're going to push it and bring it down against the work, slide it down. We're going to lock our tailstock by pushing on the tailstock lock. Give a small spin on the hand wheel to put more pressure on it. And now we're ready for the next cut. The reason we do the center drill and have the live center, if I'm going to take this tool bit and push it against the work right now, this material is both supported by the chuck and it's also supported by the live center. If I didn't have the live center here, as I push this tool bit, that work is going to start to deflect, or it's going to push away from the chuck. It's not going to be an accurate dimension or an accurate measure as we go to cut it. The cut is also going to be very rough looking, very coarse. It's not going to be very finely machined. So that is something that we want to address right now. Okay? The next thing we want to look at is the tooling we're going to use to make our turning cut. And that's going to be a cut along this portion of the material. We're going to use this cutter right here. This is called a round nose tool. And that round nose tool is going to be used to shape this. Basically what we want to do with this, we want to make a turning cut. We want to make sure that this thing is round. We also want to remove this layer off the outside of here. So we're going to take our round nose tool bit. We're going to place it in what we call an offset tool holder. Notice the end of the tool holder is going to the right hand side. What that's going to do is give us more room between the face of the chuck and where we're working at. We have other types of tool holders, but this is the correct one we want to use for this operation. So we're going to place our tool bit inside the lathe tool holder, and we want to tighten up this square nut right here. Right now, just go finger tight. We then want to take a wrench. Okay, it's a 7/16 square. We're going to place that on top of our nut, and we're going to tighten that up. Okay. Next, we're going to take this and set it up inside of our tool post. So we're going to loosen up this nut. We're going to slide this entire thing in. Now, this sits on a banana, or is what I call a banana. We can take this and rotate it up or down. We can change the pitch of the tool bit. We want this tool bit to be directly on the center line of the work. How do we check that? The easiest way to check it is to check it off the tip of the dead center, or the live center. Okay, so I know I center drilled this, and that's in the exact center of the project. That's also going to project the center line through here. So we're going to take the tip of this bit, and we're going to touch it off the tip of the live center. So we're going to take our carriage hand wheel, we're going to take our cross slide hand wheel, we're going to feed this in, we're going to touch it off, and then go finger tight with it first so it doesn't move. Then take your wrench, we're going to lay that on top of the tool post, and we're now going to tighten it up. When we go to tighten up lathe tooling, you do not have to go extremely tight. You're going to take 2 fingers, grab your wrench, and give a light pull. I don't want to see a full hand on here, both hands cranking on it. That's not what we do. 2 fingers, light pull, and that's more than enough to hold the work. So we're now going to back up our cross slide or our cross feed, bring this down to our starting point. We're going to reset our tailstock with our live center, and we're ready to make our first pass. So at this point in time, we're ready to start the turning cut. And we want to take that turning cut to freshen this up and clean all the crap off the outside of that material. It's also going to make sure that our material is round. So we're tightening the chuck, tailstock is tight, tailstock is locked in, and our hand wheel and the tailstock is also tight. So we have our 2-inch clearance here between the tool bit and the face of the chuck, and now we're ready to run that pass. So we're going to give it a free spin, make sure we're good there. We're going to turn our power on for the lathe, lift up our clutch, which is down here so you can see it. And that gets our lathe chuck spinning. We'll roll this back up so you can see it. Now, we want to take a minimal amount of material off of this to keep our diameter close to 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to take our cross slide hand wheel, we're going to take that forward, we're going to push the tool bit into the work. So we're going to turn this clockwise or to the right, and we're going to start to make a pass. Now, we're going to take the carriage hand wheel, and we are going to rotate this nice and slow to the right. If we go quickly, it's going to be a very rough looking cut. It's not going to be very clean. It's going to kind of work against us, if you will. So we're going to rotate nice and slow and do this turning cut. We're turning the work into the tool bit. Now, to start with, in level 1, we're not going to turn the speed up. As we get a little bit older, a little bit more experience with the lathes, we'll take and adjust the variable speed control, and we will increase the speed of the lathe. That's going to produce a much cleaner cut, and it's going to make things look a little bit nicer for us. Okay? The whole goal of doing machine work is to take your time with it, be precise with dimensions and measures. And that's going to save us time later down the road. If I was to cut this very quickly and move the carriage fast, I would have a lot of sanding and a lot of work to do afterwards. So rather than do it like that, we're going to take our time, go nice and slow with it, and this will work very well for us. We'll get some stringy stuff that comes off of here. If it starts to bundle around the lathe, it starts to spin, push the clutch down, wait for everything to come to a complete stop, and then we'll remove that material. Okay? My suggestion, use a pencil or something to pull that material out. Usually that material is warm because of the friction and the cutting action. You can see it starting to flop right there. Okay? I'm going to finish the task because we're down to the end. I don't really want to stop in the middle if I don't have to. Okay, so we just cleared through the material. We'll push our clutch down to stop this thing. I'm going to take a pencil and grab this stuff out of here. Okay, that stuff is also sharp on the outside edges, so don't really try to use your fingers. If you can get away with not using your fingers, don't use your fingers to get that nonsense out of there. Okay? Looks like garland on a Christmas tree. It's not as nice as garland. Okay? So the next step we want to do with this thing, we want to take and put a grip on the handle of the hammer handle. So we're going to do a process that is called knurling. 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 And it looks like a crosshatch or a diamond pattern. So in order to do that, there are a few things we need to set up with the lathe before we can move forward with that. The first thing we need to do is take our tool bit and change it. We want to take our cutting tool out and replace that with the knurling tool. So let's grab this. And this is our knurling tool. There are two wheels. Okay, you can see they have opposing grooves cut in them. We're going to take and push this against the work, and when we push it against the work, it's going to take and it's going to cut those knurls. So we're going to loosen up our tool post. We're going to remove our tool holder. I'm temporarily going to put it down here in the bed of the lathe because we're going to use that in just a minute once we finish. And we want to take and tighten this up. Now, we want to make sure our tooling is square with the work. If the tooling is not square with the work, it's going to cause issues and problems as we begin to start. So we're going to take and we're going to line this thing up. And as we line it up, I'll show you this part. This is on a pivot. Okay, we want this to find the center between both these wheels. If I have the pivot in the upward position, the bottom wheel is going to touch the work, but the top is not. Same if I have the opposite direction. If I have it locked in the bottom, usually the top wheel touches and the bottom wheel does not. So we need to make sure it's centered so both wheels touch the work. So I'm just going to physically take the tool bit, I'm going to touch it against the work, I'm going to go finger tight on the tool post, and I want to check this back and forth. I'm going to go up and down with it and make sure that the center is found and it works. Okay? We'll take and tighten this up, and that portion is complete. Now, the next thing we want to do, we want to take and we need to set this into what's called back gear. We need to take this lathe and slow it down, okay, substantially. So what we're going to do, we're going to come over here and we're going to set our back gear up. So on the outside of the lathe, I'm going to rotate a little bit more here. There is a pin right here. You're going to take and pull this pin out. You're going to hear a click. Okay, that pin needs to be pulled out. The next thing we want to do, slide back around the front. We need to set this first. This is called our lead screw direction lever. What that's going to do with us, that is going to take our lead screw, which is this thing, it's going to make it turn. Now, I have arrows drawn on here. If I have the lead screw direction lever in the upward position, it's going to make the carriage automatically move to the right. If I have this in a lower position, it's going to take my lead screw, spin it the opposite direction. It's going to make my carriage move left. For this operation, we're going to start from the left and work to the right. So I need to put this in the upward position. This has a indentation it falls into. You're going to pull out on the handle. You're going to lift it up, and it's going to fall into where it needs to go. Now, to double check to make sure that it fell into place before we turn any kind of power on, I want you to turn the hand wheel and you will see the lead screw spin. Okay, we need to make sure that's locked in all the way. The next thing we need to do is put our back gear in. So we're going to turn that knob to the left. You're going to hear a clunk, and now the back gear is falling into position. Okay, now when I turn the lathe on, this is going to run at a quarter speed. That's roughly what we're looking for. Okay, so let me slide my tripod over a little bit here, and we're going to show you what this process looks like. So here we are. Next, before we start, we'll move our tooling to our starting position. We need to take and put some cutting oil across our workpiece. Normally, we want to have a little bit of cutting oil on there, and it's going to help keep that tool bit sharp. We don't have to do it for normal cuts, but for the knurling we have to because there's a lot of pressure. A couple different types of cutting oils in here. I have something that's specific for cutting aluminum. That works. It's a heavier oil. I don't really prefer it for this stage. For this step of the game, we actually use kerosene, K1 kerosene. So I have it in a spray bottle here. We're going to douse that on our work. And we're now ready to start. So we're going to turn our machine on. We're going to pick our clutch up. Next, we're going to take our cross slide or our cross feed. We're going to push our tooling into the work. Once it starts to cut the crosshatch pattern, we're then going to come down here and pick up on the half nut lever. That's the blue knob. You're going to pick up on the half nut lever easy. We want the half nut lever to close, and it's going to grab our lead screw. So we're going to start our cross slide first. We're going to push our tool bit into the work. We're then going to pick up on our half nut lever. I just use one finger, light pressure. We're going to let this thing continue down through the work. And it's going to cut that crosshatch pattern. Now, while the automatic feed or the power feed is running, we don't leave. We don't go get a drink out of the water fountain. We don't go talk to our friend or anything of that sort. Okay, stick with the machine while it's running, and that way there's no potential issues here. Okay? So we'll let this thing run down to the end. Now when the workpiece comes to the very end, we're going to push our half nut lever down. We're going to give it a quick slap. It's going to take the half nut lever out, and then we're going to push our clutch down. So as soon as it makes the last revolution on our work, we'll do that. Okay, just made the last rev. Pop down the half nut, push down on the clutch. Now we can back out the tool bit. Okay, we will shut the lathe off so we can get some peace and quiet here for a second. Okay, and that process complete. We now need to take the lathe out of back gear for the next couple operations. So we're going to slide our tripod back over, and what we want to do here, kind of the reverse of how we did it, we're going to take our back gear knob, we're going to turn that to the right so it's out. We're then going to take our lead screw direction lever, we're going to pull out and place that in the center hole. Now here's where I tell you to check it. I want you to spin the wheel on the outside of the lathe. You can see my hand here. And my lead screw is not turning. That's one sure way to check it. The last thing we want to do is push in the back gear pin. Our back gear pin is right here. Now, two things have to happen. We have to push in on the pin and rotate this wheel at the same time. So we're going to push in on the pin, rotate, and you're going to hear a thud. Okay, when you hear the thud, the pin goes in, and that is complete. Okay, we're going to prepare for the facing cut next.